How does a seller decide which offer to accept in a multiple offer situation? In today's Omaha real estate market, many sellers are receiving multiple offers, especially below the $300,000 price point. As a buyer, it can be very frustrating to write offer after offer only to be disappointed when your offer is rejected. Now, what may be a strong offer to one seller may not be a strong offer to another seller. In today's video, we're going to look at a few offers and look at what's good and bad about those offers. Deciding which offer to accept may be a little bit harder than what you may think. That's the subject of today's video, and we're going to get started right now. My name is David Matney with Nebraska Realty. I'm a local realtor here in Omaha, Nebraska. Now, if you like this kind of content, hey, be sure to subscribe to the channel and ring that bell for notifications. Now, let's jump into today's topic. In the eyes of a seller, a strong offer is going to depend upon the seller's situation. Every seller and every situation is going to be different. It will depend upon the age of the house, the condition of the house, the type of financing, the seller's motivation, the seller's timeline, and even the agent on the other side of the transaction. A lot of different factors are in play. Now, it's not always about the price. Unfortunately, in a multiple offer situation, the seller holds all the cards. As a buyer, you need to find out what the seller's looking for in an offer. Have your agent ask the listing agent, besides price, what is most important to the seller, or what does the seller need? If you can find out what is important to the seller, you and your agent can write an offer that puts you in the best position to win the deal. Depending on how the seller answers that question, let's say the home is a little bit older and the seller doesn't want to deal with any repairs. Or maybe it's the opposite. Maybe the home is in great condition and the seller's not going to be fazed by a home inspection. Maybe the seller wants to net the most amount of money that the market will bear for that property. Maybe the seller is concerned about the home getting bid up and then the home not appraising for the purchase price. Or maybe the seller wants a quick closing. Or maybe the seller wants post-occupancy. And this is just a fact of life in this market. Many times what will happen is when you start working with a buyer, or when a buyer first enters the market, especially below that $300,000 price point, their agent will advise them on what would make a strong offer. And sometimes what will happen is many buyers have to lose a few deals before really understanding what it's going to take to get an offer accepted. As a buyer, here's another fact. You have to be patient and you got to keep trying. You just can't give up. The market we're in today is a life event market. People who are buying and selling are undergoing life events. For example, having a baby, getting a divorce, getting married, passing away, or being transferred. Now, speaking of being transferred, if you're relocating to the Omaha area and you need any assistance, my contact information is in the description below. Let's kind of take a look at a scenario. Now, this deal is an estate sale. Now, what's important to the seller in this transaction is the least amount of hassle. They want to sell the home as is and not have to deal with any repairs from the home inspection. The home is a little bit older. It's in fairly decent condition, but needs some updating. And like any other seller, they want market value for the home. Now, just for the sake of this example, in our market, a home like this would be around $225,000. Now let's look at a couple of offers. Offer number one, the purchase price is $216,000. They're coming in with a $2,000 earnest deposit. It's a 30-day closing. Pre-approval or proof of funds letter is yes. The financing it's a cash deal, no financing. There is an escalation clause. The escalation max is up to $222,000. There's no appraisal gap coverage because it's a cash deal. Since there's no appraisal. There is no home inspection and there's no home warranty. Now, it is all cash, but according to paragraph 10 of the purchase agreement, the cash is coming from a HELOC loan, which means home equity line of credit. The buyer is buying this property and taking out a loan on their existing home. Okay, offer number two is a purchase price of $215,000. The earnest deposit is $2,000. It's a 30-day closing. They did provide a pre-approval letter. The financing is VA financing. There is an escalation clause, and the escalation max is $235,000. Now, there is appraisal gap coverage, and the funds available for appraisal gap is $5,000. There's no home inspection, and there is no home warranty. Now, if you want to learn more about appraisal gap coverage, check out the video in the card above. Offer number three is a purchase price of $230. The earnest deposit is $2,500. It's a 30-day closing. They did provide a pre-approval letter, and also the lender called to speak with the listing agent. The financing is conventional financing. However, it's 82.5% loan to value. Okay, you got to be careful about this, because when a buyer writes that into the contract, that's putting the appraisal back in play. Okay, so they're getting a loan 82.5% of the value from the appraisal. So in a way, it's putting the appraisal in play. So you got to be careful about that. There is an escalation clause. The escalation max is $235,000. There's no appraisal gap coverage. They do want a home inspection, no home warranty. Offer number 4, the purchase price is $225,000. The earnest deposit is $2,000. There's a 30-day closing. They did provide a pre-approval letter. The financing is conventional. There is an escalation clause. The escalation max is $240,000, and they'll beat any other offer by $1,000. The appraisal gap coverage is yes, and the funds available for the appraisal gap is $10,000. Now, on the home inspection, they put no, but on the addendum, they said they wanted to do a sewer scope inspection. Okay, there's no home warranty. And this brings back another important point. The sewer scope inspection was on a separate addendum. So you want to make sure, if you're a seller, that you read the entire contract, including all of the addendums. Offer number 5, the purchase price was $250,000. The earnest deposit was $2,000. It's a 30-day closing. They did provide a pre-approval letter. The financing is FHA. There is no escalation clause, and there's no escalation max, and there's no appraisal gap coverage. They did want to do a home inspection, and there's no home warranty. Here's what's difficult. There is no perfect offer. There's good and bad with each one of those offers. Which offer is best in your opinion? We're going to pause the video and leave your answer in the comment section below. Now, it really isn't fair, because it's going to depend upon the situation. Will the home appraise? What is the overall condition of the home? And without seeing the home in person, you really can't come up with which is the best offer. Now, here's the other thing too. Deals fall apart for 2 reasons. Number 1 being home inspections, and number 2 being financing. Now, if you're a buyer, the best way to back out of a contract is during the home inspection. Depending on the contract, in our market, you have 14 days to conduct any and all inspections. And let's say the home is perfect. You can still back out of the deal, because you can say, hey, the home was unacceptable. I wanted some stuff to be wrong. And here's another fact of life, and that is there's really no such thing as a solid offer. There's always some element of risk involved. Okay, for example, I recently had a home go under contract, and it appeared to be a solid buyer, but the buyer backed out. The buyer was an elderly lady who was talked out of buying the home over Easter dinner by her family. The buyer backed out. Now, they lost their earnest deposit, but keep in mind, a purchase agreement is a legally binding contract. The seller could sue, or it could go to arbitration. In this case, the seller decided to let him out of the contract. However, the earnest deposit was released back to the seller. Now, let's go back and look at offer number 1. Now, offer number 1, if you don't mind the haircut on price, then cash is king. Cash is always great, because you're not dealing with an appraisal. However, financing is still in play, because they're still getting a home equity line of credit. So financing is still involved. Offer number 2 is good. However, since the financing is VA, the home has to appraise. Now, even if the buyer is willing to cover the appraisal gap, the buyer can still back out on the deal because of VA financing, even if they're come in and cover that appraisal gap. Here's the other thing you got to understand about VA financing. The home has to be safe and secure. The VA is still going to do a VA appraisal, and they're going to look for items such as peeling paint, handrails, tripping hazards, and things like that. So there could still be some items that the seller has to make repairs on. Okay, offer number 3, the home still has to appraise because the buyer wrote in 82.5% loan to value. So that means that appraisal is still in play. Offer number 4, it's a good offer. However, there's a sewer scope inspection. There's an element of risk there. Okay, if there are tree roots in that main line, the sewer line would have to be repaired. Now, this could be, for example, a $10,000 repair. If the buyer and seller don't come to terms in terms of a solution to that, if there's a sewer repair that's needed, now what has to happen? The seller, if the deal falls apart, the seller is required by law to disclose that defect to the next buyer. So really, now that seller is pretty much trapped into making that repair. So there's an element of risk there. And remember, if you're talking about an older home and you got mature hardwood trees in the front yard, that could be an issue. Now, offer number 5, hey, that is a great price on that property. However, it's FHA financing. So the home has to be safe and secure, and their FHA is going to require a FHA appraisal. And then the buyer is doing a home inspection. So the buyer can still back out. And since it's FHA financing, the home has to appraise for $250,000. So it really depends upon the condition of the house and then how secure that seller feels if the home is going to appraise or not. So there's a risk involved. If the home doesn't appraise, FHA will let them back out. So yeah, you get a higher price, but you still got to worry about the appraisal. So there's good and bad with every offer. You really need to discuss that with your agent, and you also got to take in the condition of the house. Now, if you're purchasing a home, remember, it may take a couple of offers and attempts before you get an offer accepted. Now, you got to be patient. And one certainty applies to any market, and that is the market is always changing. And eventually this market will change too. If you lose out, try to find out why. This knowledge is really important because it may help you on a future deal. And here's the other thing too. If you absolutely love the home, you have to put all your chips on the table. You got to go in at the very best offer that you can stomach. Now, here's the other thing too. Today's overpriced home will be tomorrow's bargain. And if you want to learn more about the buying process, hey, be sure to check out this next video and you make it a great day.